Silvercrow.
Welcome to the Urban Witch Podcast, where modern magic meets ancient wisdom. Join us as we unveil the truth about witchcraft and help you embrace your inner witch. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing what it is to be an urban witch, how to practice as an urban witch, and how to bring the everyday of nature into your home. So stay tuned. So what is it to be an urban witch? I think there's a I guess an urban witch is probably one of the most common types of witches. I think that it's really easy to sort of picture a witch, and this may be true for lots of people, but it's really easy to picture a witch as someone who is always out in nature, living among the woods, in little cottages and little houses deep in the forest, and sort of at one with nature. And that kind of stereotype and image that we have of what it is to be a witch, I guess, is, it's kind of an ideal for lots of people. But the reality of life really doesn't work that way. The vast majority of us live in cities. We live away from sort of forests and wild spaces. But it doesn't mean that you don't have that you still don't get the same, I guess, the same types of connection to nature as someone who lives deep in the forest will get as well. There's lots of ways to connect with nature and to bring the wild to our lives within urban settings. As an urban witch myself, I live in the city. I live right in the middle of Nottingham, and it's sort of a very urbanized place. It's very close to the city centre. But Nottingham, even in cities, is pretty green as well. There's quite a lot of green open space. And I mean, green open space could be anything really. It could be something like a park. It could be a small piece of woodland, a small garden. But even without any access to any of those things, there's this idea that nature is somehow outside of us. It's something that exists outside and we are inside. And it's not really as simple as that. We are nature and nature is us. We are all part of the natural cycle and the natural environment. And so as a result of that, then it's really easy to bring nature into our homes and into our lives. And whether you live in a high-rise block of flats, or whether you live near an industrial area, on a housing estate, it doesn't really matter. There's always ways to connect with nature and with the natural world and bring that magic into your life, no matter where you are and what you do. I think really the connecting with nature part is something that lots of us struggle with. We live, busy lives. We go and do our jobs, we work, we have children, we do whatever we do on a day-to-day basis. And often I think there's an element of kind of guilt that we don't get to dedicate the time to our practice as much as we'd like. And that may be true for lots of us, but it's not something that should restrict you from any form of practice, of witchcraft practice, any shape or form, really. I think by just recognizing that all environments are part of nature, all environments are wild in a sense. Even living in a city, even living in the middle of a city, living in the heart of a big town, there are, even though they are kind of I guess they are quite like, kind of concreted areas and lots of brickwork and buildings and so on, all of those things still have the foundations of nature, right? They're still planted. Those big high-rise flats and apartment blocks, they're planted in a natural environment of some shape or form. All of those areas were natural environments at one point in time, and so they are still. Even though they don't look like it, and we may not sort of notice that, you only have to look a little closer, and you start to realize that there are lots of lots of nature sort of emerging within the urban environment. And really understanding that helps you to kind of connect with nature in a better way, and helps it to bring more into your life, I think, and bring a sense of that connection into your life, even if you do live in a high-rise apartment block. So really, an urban witch is essentially anyone who practices witchcraft within an urban setting, more or less, or utilizes the urban environment in their practice. And obviously, if you live in an urban environment, then it's easier for you to do that, and you're more likely to be, part of that kind of urban witch type lifestyle. So how do you do it? How do you practice as an urban witch um, in an urban environment? Well, really, there's lots of different ways. As I said, we're all part of nature, and nature is us, and we are it. So there isn't kind of a distinction there. So we are able to tap into that all the time. And what it means is how we practice, and the way we go about our practice as urban witches is often lots of us try to bring the natural environment, bring nature indoors with us. And that could be as simple as, you go for a walk in a park somewhere, you pick up some pine cones or acorns or leaves or whatever it is, and you bring them in. It could be that you have houseplants, that you have pots, that you bring pots into the home. Houseplants, all kinds of plants are a great kind of connecting, I guess, a kind of a connecting device to nature. Because plants are, in terms of green witchcraft, for instance, we believe that plants are kind of beings in their own right. They're not just these things to be looked at and to be watered and gazed at occasionally. They're living, breathing beings, and they have their own ways, their own personalities, their own functions as beings. And so developing that connection through houseplants, through bringing plants and foliage indoors, and having it in pots, and that all helps to do that. I think if in terms of trying to do that, if you live in a high-rise block of flats, for instance, and you don't have access to a garden or a wild open space, then bringing plants indoors in pots and placing them in your home is a real lovely way of developing that connection. And developing connection with houseplants is a really lovely thing to do, especially when you start thinking of them in terms of beings of their own rights, rather than just plants, rather than just things. Because when you do that, then you develop a real close sort of relationship with your plants, and therefore they bring out all of the I guess bring out very human qualities of ourselves, things like empathy and things like care and love and affection and things like that. And they can really help us to understand the natural world. And also, in terms of things like, if you bring herbs and grow herbs inside, then you can utilize those herbs in your magic as well. So you grow your own sources of magical herbs and magical ingredients in that way. So you've got them always to hand. So it's kind of it's a no lose situation, really. It's a win-win all round. You bring the magic inside, you bring the nature inside, but you also have the things that you can use, like tangible things that you can use. And developing this relationship with plants indoors helps you develop this tangible relationship. It's kind of a give and take. Like, you care for the plant, and therefore then you are, in return, you're given it's like a trade. You're given the parts of the plant that you need, whether that be berries or fruits or leaves or roots or whatever it is that you need for your practice. And so all of those things are a real easy way of bringing that sense of connection and naturality indoors. And I mean, even within that, we all have that sort of nature within us, and we resonate with certain things. And it could be as simple as, if you go say you go on holiday or you go for a day trip somewhere and you find a pebble on a beach, bring it home. There's kind of a thing with a lot of witches, and we have this tendency to gather things as we're out and about, things of the natural environment. I don't think any of us really can go down the street without picking up a stick or a log or a piece of bark or a twig or a shell or a stone. We bring things home all the time because we see nature as a sacred thing. Nature for us is kind of like for most witches really, nature's kind of our church in effect. We worship and we hold sacred the natural environment. And so anything of the natural environment is also, again, deepening that sacred connection and developing that connection for us. So bringing those types of things home is always a lovely thing to do. And particularly when you hold sort of symbolism to things, there's certain, we could go just down the street, you would see numerous trees. And if you start to get to know what trees are in your immediate environment, then you'll quickly realize that lots of those trees will be trees that are held sacred within witchcraft. And they will have abilities, they will have correspondences, and things like, the berries may be used for certain things, and the bark may be used, and the leaves may have a significance or a symbolism, and so on. So just going about your day-to-day life within an urban environment is often enough. And then so the more you kind of get to know your environment, your urban environment, then the more you start to develop this relationship with it. And then you start to see the connections of the natural world and of how it fits into that urbanization. And then we go on to foraging. Foraging is not just the domain of woodland and fields. Foraging is something that you can do in the urban environment, and I do on a regular basis. I regularly forage in the urban environment. Just going for a walk. I have a dog, and I take the dog out for a walk. Little Archie is my little cockapoo, and he's my kind of little familiar. I take him out for a walk, and we go on a walk, and I'll forage while he's having his run, while he's walking. And it's surprising the stuff that you find. A while back, myself and my partner Claire, we went just on a 15-minute walk, and within 15 minutes, we saw countless different types of herbs that we gathered and used, and I still have and use them now. Bring them back and dry them and use them, and it's really, really simple to do. And I think it's really easy especially within an urban environment, because there's lots of concrete and roads and tarmac and bricks and so on. It's really easy to kind of dismiss the things that grow out of the cracks of those things, the things that grow out of cracks between paving slabs and paving stones, and out of the cracks in bricks, in walls, and so on. And often you find some really interesting and really useful herbs and wild plants that grow just on pavements, on roadsides. Just at the end of our road, in the summer, we had wild oregano growing, marjoram. We had that growing and it was literally just growing in abundance out of the corner of the road. So it's possible to have all of those things and to still develop that connection with nature and still develop that real sense of connection and belonging and sacredness of the natural world, even within the urban environment, just by doing those things. And not to mention things like berries and things like, at certain times of year, you'll get different types of things. And in urban environments, especially, you get, you'll get things like wild blackberries just growing randomly. Nettles grow abundantly in urban environments, and nettles are, classed as a superfood. Dandelions grow in an urban environment, at least in this hemisphere anyway, in the northern hemisphere. If you're able to get outdoors, then great. But what happens if you're someone who is perhaps wheelchair bound and getting around may be a bit more difficult? Then equally, there will always be ways that you can interact with nature. Then, opening windows, for instance, opening windows and allowing the wind, allowing the breeze to come in is a great way of cleansing the home. Utilizing the elements, having candles that you burn. You utilize, again, it's utilizing the elements again. You're bringing in the elements of fire and elements of water. You can have a bowl of water that it could be moon water, it could be some other type of water that you've created, Florida water, whatever it is. There's always ways of developing all of that and bringing in aspects of the natural world into your home. And whether that's something that you create in an altar, I have an altar space that I've brought a lot of outdoor type objects into the home. I have my hagstone on my pendant. I have bark and logs and stones and things like that. I have my standing stones just there, just next to me, like balancing stones, and just simple things like that. Those were from a beach in North Yorkshire, and that was just sort of they're all balanced by themselves. They're not glued in any shape or form. But the idea is it's to a visual reminder to me, a visual symbol of balance. All of my practice centers around being balanced and holding that balance of nature, and balancing ourselves with nature, balancing ourselves with ourselves and with other people, but also staying in harmony with nature. And the balancing stones are a visual reminder of that. So that is a really simple way of bringing that green natural witchcraft into the home and developing that practice within an urban environment. Going back to the foraging, just foraging for, you may even find, if you have a garden, you may even find that you can find stuff in your garden that is useful. Nettles, dandelions, things like that I've already mentioned, they grow abundantly in most people's gardens, really. In fact, they become a pest for lots of people. But it's about shifting perspectives. Things that are often classed as weeds that we step over all the time are often really useful in terms of magic. We often walk over things like thistles, and we walk over things like nettles, and we walk past even things like lemon balm and mint all the time, but we just don't recognize that's what they are because they look like weeds. They grow through cracks in pavements and stuff. So it's really just about getting to know your immediate environment, get to know your urbanized space, get to know what there is there, getting to know how what animals and wildlife live around that area, what foliage and plants and herbs are around that area, what trees exist around in your urban environment, and then bringing those in, incorporating those things into your practice. And if it means bringing some in, you could take cuttings of plants. If you do it carefully, you can sort of ask the plants, and take cuttings from the plants and then grow them indoors in pots. And most plants and trees will grow quite happily in a pot. Obviously trees will take a long time to grow because such is the life cycle of trees. But you can get quite a lot, picking up acorns and planting them into soil. An acorn that's fallen from a tree and is brown and crisp, you can plant that into soil, and the following year you'll get a small little shoot grow, and that'll be the starts of a new oak tree. And oak trees are sacred all round. And even if it means having small sort of little pots of sacred trees or plants or shrubs that are growing on a windowsill or on a shelf somewhere, it doesn't really matter how you do it. The idea is it's about making those connections that we are all nature and nature is us, and it's all around us, and we don't have to be restricted to that, with that nature. We don't have to be restricted and limited from it. We are always part of it, regardless of where we live. So I hope that that's kind of giving you a bit of an idea about the way to go about and how easy it is to kind of incorporate this sort of urban environment into your daily practice. It's a lot easier than you think, and I think often it helps to kind of not put that pressure upon yourself. I think try not to, if you don't if you miss out on, you know, say you've gone on a walk, so when you don't bring an acorn back or a pine cone back or whatever, it's no biggie. You know, don't kick yourself about it. Don't sort of put pressure on yourself to have to go and seek these things. Make it happen more naturally. You know, start to incorporate it gradually and kind of routinely into your life, and then it doesn't become a chore. It becomes easy to do. It starts to be something that you do and you get into a daily habit. And then the more you do that, then the more you start to see the balance and the connections that we can make with the outside world. So I hope that's kind of given you some a bit of an understanding and answer some questions about, you know, what it is to be an urban witch, really. So hopefully it'll you know, try and incorporate these things into your life, into your practice, and don't dwell on them too much. Just make it part of your day to day. And even when we were saying earlier about, you know, if you struggle to get around, even that, you know, there's lots of ways that you can do that. You know, incorporating nature into your home, no matter how small it is. You know, it's just about connecting and providing that connection and feeling that connection. And once you feel that connection with the natural world, then you're halfway there. So hopefully that's helped answer some questions. And I really think that there are lots of benefits. There are lots of benefits for the bringing magic into the urban environment and from the urban environment. Thanks for watching this episode of the Urban Witch Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on all of the socials at Silvercrow UK, or visit our website at silvercrow.uk and stay up to date with everything that we do. Once again, for this week, that's all we've got time for. So stay wild, stay wise, and keep the magic alive.